Oh, my name is Michael Bridges, and I am here to discuss the Overwatch 2 study, and particularly this is the summary of our findings. So, to begin, start with the summary. The level of enjoyment significantly influences players' likelihood to recommend the game, with those enjoying it less likely to endorse it. Communication without a microphone does pose challenges, and toxic interactions among players are quite prevalent among our test groups. However, players have given commendable ratings to the gameplay experience, average rating of about 4.5, though the musical aspect falls slightly short, rated at a 4.16. Despite areas needing attention, such as music, the predominantly positive feedback provides a strong foundation for future improvement in the gaming experience. So, to go over our findings overview, or to go over our findings initially, finding one, perceived fun impacts NPS or Net Promoter Score. Uh, we found that the fun metric that directly impacts the NPS, with players not having a fun score above 3, mostly not being promoters. We do recommend design teams should consider adding casual modes for players of lesser skills, because that was usually what caused the fun score to suffer, was players who uh, didn't have the skill or were not enjoying the complexity of Overwatch 2. Our second finding is communication issues. Players found communication in game difficult without a microphone and often encounter toxic or rude players. Our next recommendation for this is design team should consider implementing a merit system rewarding well-behaved players. And for our third finding, the overall rating for gameplay is high, which is good. The overall gameplay aspects rating, as mentioned before, averages about 4.5, except music, which sits at 4.16. We do recommend that design teams should consider reinforcing the in-game music to bring it into an alignment with the rest of the gameplay aspects. Um, to hopefully help bring that average up. Going on to our first finding, this is a neutral finding, so take this as you will. The fun rating of each player significantly influences the net promoter score. Uh, Reference the chart to the right here. When considered collectively, the percentage of promoters is less than desirable, resulting in a net NPS of 6.38. This correlation is directly linked to the fun score, although there were outliers who scored a fun rating of 3, yet were still labeled as promoters. Reference again the chart to the right here, which illustrates the distribution of the NPS. Just in case there are people who are only listening, the chart denotes that there is a 15.1% distribution to detractors, 41.5% which are neutral, and 43.4% which are promoters. The neutral players here are more likely to be converted into promoters based on our recommendations mentioned earlier, and we will dive into those momentarily with an expanded overview or insights. Moving on to finding two. For the analysis of finding two, this is a minor finding. The number of reports of communication issues within our playtest survey, containing 52 responses, extrapolates to a significant portion of players. The percentages shown in this playtest may signify a larger population, as we didn't test teams but rather single players. If we were to assume that each person who reported the issues also had 3 participants playing that also experienced the issues, the percentage rate would inflate to upwards of 35%. Assuming 3 participants with the initial 7 would increase the overall reports of this issue to 28, and then the sample size would be 73. Finding the percentage rate for these numbers leads to a 38% report rate. Um, so, to explain this just a little bit more, we had 7 participants out of our initial pool of 52. uh, attest to encountering negativity and toxicity within their playtime. If we were to assume that we were testing in groups of four, so four players and with one reporting and three other players playing with them, and we add those extra three into our pool, inflating it up to 73, then we would see a percentage of around 38%. This is only loosely based as we are not extrapolating that to every person, but only those who reported it, which could dilute it a little bit. However, it still reflects a significant issue, or, well, in this case, minor issue, but could still be a significant issue depending on the effects it might have had on the NPS, which for the most part of those that reported it were neutral instead of detractors. Finding 3, the analysis for finding 3. This is a positive finding. The gameplay aspect rating is very high overall, even among those who had a low fun rating. This is a very good sign for the game to be able to improve the NPS by accounting for players of a lower skill level. The only score that did not average around 4.5 is music, which averaged at 4.16. This is the lowest score by point 0 or 0.3 points. This is small, which is good. However, it could be improved. The music aspect combined with some of the previous mentions for recommendations could improve your NPS score. Speaking of, let's go ahead and move on into the overall recommendation. This is where I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into what we recommend you were to do. Recommend that the design team considers implementing a comprehensive approach to enhance the gaming experience, including designing a reputation or merit-based system that rewards well-behaved players in groups, them based on merit, fostering a better and safer environment for players. This would allow players who communicate clearly, concisely, or are relatively calm and collected to be grouped together, while players who provide an overall negative impact, so players that curse profanities or get upset very easily or agitated, or start hurling uh, offensive words and overall bringing down the session would be grouped together, which could be good, could be bad. However, it would still improve the overall feel for those who are well behaved. Our next recommendation, developing casual modes tailored for players of lower skill levels. We're introducing optional matchmaking for those unfamiliar with similar games, ensuring a more inclusive and enjoyable experience. While there are the arcade modes, every person that plays this game of any skill level are still matchmaked in those arcade modes together. We've had a couple participants mention that there is a glaringly obvious issue with the matchmaking where the balance is very much so tends to side for one team or the other, where one team would have several good or high ranked players, while the opposite team will not. And then this would be in the arcade modes and the ones in non competitive modes. Um, Adding a new playlist or matchmaking option that is for tailored for new players that when a player first installs the game is allowed to use or first makes an account is allowed to use will allow these newer players who might get completely destroyed in these other modes a chance to grow and learn the game. Moving on to our third one, reinforcing the existing in game music to align it with the standards of other gameplay aspects, potentially boosting the overall net promoter score when combined with other recommendations. And again, this is on the positive finding, this third one here. We still recommend improving the music, even if it's only slightly, as it will bring the aspect in line with the other aspects which are rated very highly. While this aspect, music, is rated highly, it is still lacking when compared to the other main components. Uh, Bringing this up, along with the other two findings or other two recommendations, sorry, will have a very good likelihood of turning the neutral detractors, or the players who are labeled as neutral in the FPS score, to become people who will recommend the game and will aid your game getting out there, and also bring some detractors up into the neutral range, so they will not have as strong of an effect. And finally, Q&A time. If there are any questions, please ask now.